Hi folks, Doc here. It's a nice bright sunny Saturday morning. Still a little on the cool side, and as you know, some of you are probably aware that there's been snow coming and going over the last couple of days. A lot of you folks in the States saw this too and kind of, what the no. Anyways, I'm going to enjoy the day while I can, so I'm going to shoot outside the shop as opposed to in. We're going to have to step inside to have a look at the whiteboard in a little bit, but in the meantime, we're going to enjoy the sunshine. Now, if you saw my unit on relays, this next little bit is going to show you the practical application of a relay. Let's see what we can get into, shall we? So whenever you go to do something, the first question, as usual, is why? Why do I want to take out my standard OPE key switch and switch it out with an automotive switch? Well, there could be a number of reasons. Number one, thanks to the magic of editing, this here is the key switch out of Mule 2. And you'll notice it's got a Toro key. This is the same key I use for my snowblower. In fact, I got this key with my snowblower. And these are cheap and crappy and failure prone, and if you have any one of these particular type of key, you can start like 80% of the lawn tractors out there, which means it's kind of a security risk. If you've got, a younger brother or sister, you might want to switch off to, a decent switch, or, some neighborhood kids that are a bit of a pain in the rear end. Theft is an issue. These things get old, worn out, failure prone, and then stuff like that starts to happen. So to basically upgrade the ignition system, as far as I'm concerned, as far as you're concerned, it might be a security thing. I decided, we're going to go with an automotive key switch. Now the one that I used, and you'll see it, is $8 I think it was I spent at Princess Auto. Any universal automotive ignition switch will do, and it'll certainly be cheaper than going off to your OPE dealer and getting another one of these. Whenever you're doing electrical work on your tractor, step one is always to disconnect the battery. In the case of Mule 2 here, I'm actually going to remove it completely because it will end up in my way. When disconnecting a battery, always disconnect the ground first. That way you don't have any accidental shorts that are going to wind up giving you a new hairstyle. As you can see, my wiring needs tidying up, and when I figure I've got all the electrical modifications done to Mule 2 here, I'll do the same thing I did on Mule 1 and put in a fancy fuse box and nice tight wiring and zip tying and yada yada yada. In the meantime, here's a closer look at the factory switch, which you're used to seeing, and the factory key, which you're used to seeing. And we're going to go ahead and take that switch out, so that means undoing this nut here and pulling the connector off the back and drawing it out. I've already loosened it, so I can do this one-handed. We're just going to pull that out of there and disconnect the connector. Decided I wanted my switch a wee bit more accessible, so I'm going to make a new hole in the dashboard for that, and I've got an idea for the other hole, which I'll leave till later. In the meantime, the two holes weren't the same size anyway, so I would have had to do some drilling or hogging regardless. Okay, we've got the switch in as a test fit, but it's not tightened down yet. Looks pretty good. The next step is identifying your existing wiring. For this, you may wish to temporarily reinstall your battery, or in my case, I'm actually using a boost box with jumper cables, just so that I can make use of a test light and figure out what's what. Now, I already know through the process of testing which wire is my kill wire, and to verify, all I did was disconnect it, start the engine, and then turn the key back off again. The engine continued to run until I made the connection. So I already know that this black wire here is my kill wire. Now, I'm going to use a test light to determine what else is going on here. That leaves us needing to find the start wire coming off the key. And that needs to find, we need to find the power in from the battery, and we need to find the power out that would go out to any accessories if you have an accessory circuit. So we've got our test light connected to the ground, and as you can see, whenever I hit a positive, it lights up. Now in this bright sunlight you might have trouble seeing, I apologize for that, but it's a nice day. Okay, so all I'm going to do is probe around on the key with the key in the off position just to find power. Alright, don't know if you can see the light. I found it there. It's a red wire with a white stripe in this particular case, and we're just going to make a mental note of that. Now, in order to find the accessory wire, we have to turn the key into the on position and find out what other lead is powered. So we already know the red one. There we go. Okay, so in this case it's a green wire. Now I'm just going to reach down and flick the key off, and the light goes out. So that wire gets powered when the key is on. That leaves us with the black wire out of the key being power. That's actually the white on the tractor being the kill lead, and that leaves red being the power with the white stripe, and the green wire being power out, key on. So that leaves a purple wire, and the purple wire is going to be start. With the battery again disconnected, I'm just going to get my new switch out of the way. I'm going to cut off that crappy factory connector and strip the ends of the wires. Okay, so with the wiring sorted out and the connector is cut off and everything figured out, I guess we'll start off with some of the easy stuff first. I'm just going to take the length of wire here, and I'm going to crimp a ring terminal on it. And I guess the first thing we'll do, being as straightforward as it is the start wire. Get that crimped on there good. And we know that it's the purple wire. I've already slipped a bit of heat shrink tubing on here, and I'm going to solder it after the fact. So we'll just twist them together for the moment. I'm going to go ahead and attach that right to the start terminal on the key switch. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is feed the battery side of the key switch. I'm completely out of fuse holders, so what I've done is I've put a female quick connect on the appropriate wire, and I've got another length of wire here also with a quick connect on it, and I'm just going to use that for the fuse, and we're going to just wrap this up with electrical tape to keep it from shorting out, and tie that to the battery terminal on the key switch. Okay, so the last order of business on the new ignition switch is to connect the wires that need to be powered with the key on. So I did that. I put a ring terminal on them and connected them. And the other thing I did is I added a tag of wire from the same terminal on the key switch. That's going to feed the relay for the kill. We can go ahead and install this switch now. Okay, so now might be a good time to retest the functionality. I'm going to turn the key on. You can see my alternator light coming on. Bright out here. Can you see that? It is coming on. And then headlights. Headlights off with the key. Good stuff. And the winch. Off with the key. Got winch, got headlights, got it all. Okay, good to proceed. Now we need to work on the kill side of things. Okay, now for the killing side of things. I have here a standard 5-pin automotive relay. You are going to need a 5-pin for this. Remember, if you watched the unit on relays, we talked about the 87A pin, and that's what you're going to need here. That's the normally closed pin, and what that's going to allow us to do is when you power up the relay, i.e. turning your ignition switch on, it lifts the ground. That's the physical action that's going to take place to allow your engine to have spark. So you need a 5-pin automotive relay with the 87A terminal. Now, what I've done here is I've made up a bit of wire with 2 male quick connects and a ring terminal. And we're going to attach this to the relay. This, by the way, this ring terminal is going to go to a convenient ground, so you might not want to cut this length yet until you know where you're grounding to. So we're going to connect pin 87A on the relay, and we're going to connect pin 85, and these are what gets grounded. So when this is grounded, the trigger side of the coil is always grounded, and 87A is that contact that's going to kill it when we shut the ignition switch off. I've already added the spade connectors I need here. I've got the kill wire, and I've got the ignition on from the ignition switch. So the ignition on from the ignition switch is going to go to terminal number 86, which is going to energize the relay with the ignition on. And the kill switch is going to go to terminal number 30. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a quick moment to bolt this to the chassis. In this case, I'm going to use one of the nuts that holds the throttle lever in place. Okay, time for a function test. If you listen really closely, you should hear the relay click with the key on. Alright. Oops. Bad connection. In the moment of truth. Alright, good to go. Okay, so here's your wiring diagram as promised. Showing are the battery, your new automotive style ignition switch, and relay. Start with the basic stuff first. Battery gets grounded to the chassis. That doesn't change no matter what you do. Now, with the relay, you'll see that 85 and 87A are tied together and then grounded. 85 is so that the trigger coil of the relay gets its negative, and 87A is that normally closed contact that we've been talking about that you're going to need to make this whole thing work. So basically what's going to happen here is you've got terminal 30 tied to the kill wire on your magneto. When the coil is energized, there is no contact between 30 and 87A, so your ignition can do what it's supposed to do. When you de-energize the coil, it falls back into its normally closed state. 87A gets connected to 30 and grounds out the primary side of the coil, killing the engine. So that's pretty straightforward. 30 to the magneto, 85 and 87A tied together and grounded. Terminal 86 is the trigger positive for the coil, for the relay. And that is going to come off the ignition terminal on your new key switch. So just to back this up a notch, you're going to take your battery positive through a fuse to the battery positive terminal on your new ignition switch. From there, you're going to take the ignition terminal and tie it into terminal number 86 on the relay, so that when you turn the key switch on, the relay is energized and it breaks the connection between 30 and 87A. If you have other key-on accessories to run on your tractor, you know, lights, radio, winch stuff, whatever, you're going to take it from the ignition terminal. And I would obviously suggest to you that the key switch can only handle so much, so if you've got more than a couple of amps worth of a load coming out of this, that you run this to the trigger terminal of another relay. Back to the key switch. Start terminal on the key switch goes to your starter relay as it did before. You're just transferring it over to the new key switch. And that, folks, is, as they say, as simple as that. Alright, so with the installation completed, there's not a lot to see. You can see the key switch there, and you can kind of see the relay tucked in behind the battery, and everything else is pretty much hidden on this thing. There's not a lot of space to work with. As you can see, I cleaned up my battery cables a little bit. I had a bit of a knot of wiring on top. So whatever became of that extra hole in the dashboard, the original key switch hole? What's that? That is a battery disconnect switch. This is the key. Key go in there. Here's a closer look at that device. It consists of a removable key and a couple of large lugs on it. When you put the key in and give it a twist, it makes contact. When you remove the key, it breaks the contact. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the installation details. I'm sure you don't need to be told how to, drill a couple of holes and screw the thing in. As far as wiring goes, it's really quite simple on a basic lawn tractor. Basic installation on a lawn tractor would consist of the following. As you're well aware, your positive battery cable goes directly to your starter relay. If you were to use one of those disconnect switches, you would very simply take the battery cable off the starter relay and put it to one lug on the disconnect switch, and then the other lug of the disconnect switch goes to the battery lug on the relay. It's that simple. It just gets spliced in line, and that is that. So it's pretty simple. Take the key out, no power, zilch, nothing on the lights, nothing on the gauges, nothing. Put the key in, good to go. That covers the installation of an automotive style ignition switch and the relay that has to be added to make it work with a magneto equipped ignition system. And I'd like to thank you for watching, sharing, and subscribing. And I invite you to check out the Sprocket's Garage Facebook group and visit Sulphur City Design to feed your adhesive addiction. Until next time, take care of yourself.